Peru, a bus plunges off a mountain road, leaving dozens dead.
Authorities say 34 passengers were rushed to the nearest hospitals. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Alagao-Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. And now for the headlines. President Marcos Jr. still hopeful to achieve the 20 pesos per kilo for rice. United States and Japanese envoys alarmed over damage in the Rosal Reef. United Nations General Assembly highlights sustainable development goals. Son of Sinaloa cartel kingpin El Chapo pleads not guilty to U.S. drug charges. And heads up gamers as esports debuts as an authentic sporting event in the Asian Games. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. commends the 1.8 million government workforce for their endeavors in celebration of the 123rd Philippine Civil Service anniversary this month. The Civil Service Commission, or CSC, spearheads the celebration pursuant to Presidential Proclamation number 1050, series of 1997. This declares the month of September as Civil Service Month.
It is an honor to greet the 1.8 million strong government workforce, our public servants, mga kapwa kong lingkod bayan sa lahat ng sangay ng pamahalaan. A meaningful and joyous 123rd Philippine Civil Service Anniversary.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. vows to realize the 20 pesos per kilo of rice target, hoping to stabilize the cost of production in the country, soon to achieve his administration's goals. The president is leading a distribution of smuggled rice in the city of Zamboanga and explains that external factors are also affecting the prices of basic commodities in the Philippines. He stresses that the government is already maximizing all its resources to ensure the affordability of staple food in the market. President Marcos also reassures that farmers are receiving reasonable prices despite the price ceiling set on the price of rice.
A research firm reports that the price ceiling on rice has seen giving the central bank a room to pause its rate hikes. Vin Pasco for the details.
HSBC Global Research reveals that the imposition of price caps on milled rice paved the way for a continued pause on Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas or BSP's policy rate hikes. According to the research firm's economist Aris Dacanay, Executive Order number 39, signed by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., was in time with a 20% jump seen in the global benchmark prices. Dacanay notes that the price spike was a result of India's restrictions of all varieties of rice exports. HSBC Global Research projects that the central bank will keep its policy rate unchanged at 6.25% when the Monetary Board meets on September 21st. Vin Pascua reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The House of Representatives is recommending a suspension of excise tax on petroleum products to President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Lawmakers cite that a temporary suspension of the excise taxes would help in alleviating oil prices if it hits 80 pesos per barrel, and plans on buying oil in advance as prices are expected to rise even further. The Department of Energy and other lawmakers are cautious about suspending the tax, citing that the government could lose as much as 4.9 billion pesos in revenue. They recommend further study on the subject and more meetings with the oil industry companies.
A petition has been filed before the Supreme Court seeking to declare Republic Act number 11954 or Maharlika Investment Fund Act of 2023 unconstitutional. This is to seek the issuance of a temporary restraining order against the said legislation. The petitioners described the law creating the Maharlika Fund unconstitutional due to claims that the Congress rushed its approval through a presidential certification of urgency. They add that the establishment of the said sovereign wealth fund as a government-owned corporation has failed to satisfy the test of economic viability. This was said to violate the independence of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. signed the bill into law last July 18, 2023, creating the country's first sovereign wealth fund.
The Office of Civil Defense, or OCD, reassures that the government will continue to assist and distribute aid to the communities currently affected by Mayon volcano's ongoing turbulence. Mayon volcano is still under alert level 3 and may result in a hazardous eruption. More than 38,000 individuals are directly or indirectly affected by this volcanic activity. The OCD has visited and inspected various warehouses and evacuation centers and provided 25 million pesos worth of food and non-food items to the affected residents. About 437 million pesos have been dispersed by the OCD alongside other government agencies as combined aid with 2.3 billion pesos earmarked for any eventualities.
The U.S. and Japanese ambassadors to the Philippines are voicing concerns over Chinese vessels causing damage to the marine resources in the West Philippine Sea. The Philippine Coast Guard has reported an increase of Chinese vessels in the area, 33 in Rosal Reef and another 15 in Escoda Shoal. U.S. Envoy Mary Kay Carlson highlights that the coral destruction and habitat damage negatively affects lives and livelihoods. Japanese Ambassador Kazuhiko Koshikawa urges the international community to aid in protecting the marine ecosystems in the Philippines. China, however, dismisses the issue as disinformation, denying any responsibility toward the damaged coral reefs in Rosal Reef and Escoda Shoal.
The Department of Foreign Affairs, or DFA, has expressed its concern about reports of the destruction of corals in Rosal Reef. This is after the Armed Forces of the Philippines confirmed Saturday that the corals in the said reef have disappeared due to apparent massive harvesting. AFP previously reported that there were Chinese fishing vessels swarming the said area between September 6 and 7. DFA has called the attention of those who depend on the South China Sea to cease all activities that can damage the precious marine environment in the said waters. DFA adds that the Philippines has consistently raised the alarm on ecologically harmful activities conducted by foreign vessels. This was an issue broadly discussed in the 2016 Arbitral Award on the South China Sea. Coming up, Ukraine sues its EU neighbors. Canada accuses India of conspiring to kill a Sikh leader on foreign soil. And the UNGA New York highlights sustainable development goals. Stay tuned for more stories around the globe when we return.
Net 25 is waving. Have a glimpse of our shows. Here on Net 25, it's an endless watching experience. We're just a click away to Net Together.
Hi guys! Si Dimples Romana po ito at excited ako dahil bibita tayo sa kusina ng lutong dagat. Ang sarap naman ng energy ko. Maganda na lang yung take off. Magluluto tayo ng mga seafood specials for the weekend. 11 o'clock po yan dito sa Net 25.
Welcome back to Matanang Agila International. Taiwan's defense ministry said it detected 55 Chinese warplanes and 7 naval vessels around its island. This is after Taiwan's ministry accused China of carrying out provocative actions that were leading to escalating tensions and deteriorating regional security. Taipei notes that around half of the 55 detected warplanes crossed its so-called median line of the Taiwan Strait. This is set to separate the island from China. Taiwan recently urged China to immediately stop such unilateral actions. China's foreign ministry, however, did not comment on the sorties.
China has complained to Germany after its foreign minister labeled Chinese leader Xi Jinping a dictator. Chinese Foreign Ministry describes German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock's remarks as an open political provocation.
中方对德方的有关言论强烈不满，坚决反对。德方言论极其荒谬，严重侵犯中方政治尊严，是公开的政治挑衅。中方已通过外交渠道向德方提出严正交涉。
The German top official made her remarks in a live interview last week. She was asked about her opinions about Russia's war on Ukraine. Last June, United States President Joe Biden also called Xi a dictator. This occurred a day after U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken concluded his visit to China, seeking to mend ties.
America's top diplomat and China's vice president voiced hope for more stability as the rival powers hold their second high-level talks in days. Jeff Sanidad has more details.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken meets China's Vice President Han Zhang in New York on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. Blinken says he believes in face-to-face diplomacy to deal with disagreements. He says it is a good thing to have the opportunity to build on the recent high-level engagements that the United States and China have had. The talks, Blinken says, aim to make sure that the two countries maintain open communications and demonstrate responsibility in managing the relationship. Han says that the world's two largest economies face a lot of difficulties and challenges. He says the world needs healthy and stable U.S.-China relations, which benefit not only China and the U.S., but the whole world. Jeff Sanidad for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol gave a warning to North Korea if they decide to deploy their nuclear weapons against Seoul. This is after Yoon declared that Seoul and Washington have reaffirmed that any nuclear attack by North Korea will be met with a swift and decisive response. Yoon's pronouncement came out on the final day of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's visit to Russia. Yoon claimed that the military cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow is illegal and unjust, as it was said to contravene the United Nations Security Council resolutions. Last week, Russian President Vladimir Putin reaffirmed Moscow's intentions to build good neighborly relations with Pyongyang, noting that they have never violated anything.
Ukraine has filed a lawsuit to the World Trade Organization, or WTO, against Slovakia, Poland, and Hungary over their bans of food imports to Kyiv.
Обмежувальні заходи проти нашого аграрного сектору з боку Євросоюзу скасовані. Зараз важливо, щоб європейська єдність працювала на двосторонньому рівні з сусідами, щоб сусіди у час війни Україну підтримали. Європа виграє завжди, коли договори працюють, а обіцянки виконуються. Ну а якщо рішення сусідів будуть не сусідськими, Україна буде цивілізовано відповідати.
The aforementioned countries responded by saying that the bans were necessary to protect their farmers from cheap imports and to promote local trade movements within their borders. The Russia-Ukraine conflict, which started last year, closed the main Black Sea shipping lanes and forced Ukraine to find alternative overland routes, which in turn led to large quantities of Ukrainian grain ending up in Central Europe. Farmers in those countries have since held protest rallies, saying that Ukrainian grain shipments were undercutting them and distorting local markets. The pressure led to the 27-member EU bloc agreeing earlier this year to trade restrictions on Ukraine's imports into Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, as well as Bulgaria and Romania until September 15. On the date of the deadline, however, the European Commission decided not to extend the ban. In response, governments in Budapest, Warsaw, and Bratislava defied the Commission's move by announcing their own restrictions.
Now, we heard that a group of countries, neighboring countries, said that if this is to happen, they will introduce their national restrictions.
In a statement, Ukraine's economy minister Yulia Severydenko said, and I quote, "It is crucially important for us to prove that individual member states cannot ban imports of Ukrainian goods. That is why we are filing lawsuits against them to the WTO." Poland says it would still retain the ban regardless. Poland and Slovakia are key Ukraine's allies in its fight against Russia, but the grain import row has often caused friction within their ranks.
If they behave like this, they will leave us with no chance but to fiercely defend our rights and rights of Ukrainian farmers. And with all our hearts, we want to avoid that situation.
Russia has sent drones targeting the Ukrainian city of Lviv, resulting in a series of explosions and subsequent warehouse fires. Firefighters can be seen fighting back at the huge blaze that has spread over nearly 1,000 square meters of industrial warehouses. 15 of the 18 drones in the attack had been shot down. Ukraine has also reported that Russia launched a total of 30 drones and 1 ballistic missile on Ukraine at the same time.
South Africa opens an investigation on U.S. pharmaceutical corporation Johnson & Johnson's excessive pricing of a drug that treats tuberculosis. RT's Nolov Guyukunge tells us more.
South Africa's Competition Commission is known for investigating matters when it has a reasonable suspicion that there has been exploitative behavior or unethical behavior. And in this case, it does believe that Johnson & Johnson could be in contravention of Section 8 of the Competition Act, which deals with excessive pricing and regulatory conduct. It will therefore investigate the American drug maker for the high price it has been charging the country for the tuberculosis medicine bedaquiline. Johnson & Johnson will also be probed for extending bedaquiline's 20-year patent until 2027 to block cheaper generics from entering the country. It does become even more difficult to even comprehend the move by Johnson & Johnson, especially when you think about how South Africa has one of the highest TB disease rates in the world. And despite it being curable, TB is the country's top killer. We do know it lived up to their decades-long accusation of prioritizing profits above human lives. And during all of that, South Africa was not spared. Just a few days ago, we saw that there was an exposure of Johnson & Johnson's Take It. The Pretoria High Court ordered the health department to release documents that showed how these big pharmaceutical companies insisted on indemnity clauses, forcing governments to pay more than double what they charged wealthy countries in the West, and had sweeping waivers, effectively leaving governments hanging out to dry. The contracts also clearly revealed the kind of percentages and prices that Johnson & Johnson was offering to South Africa compared to these other Western countries. Activists in South Africa reflected on the matter.
In simple terms, Big Pharma bullied South Africa into these conditions. Amid a deadly pandemic, when scarce vaccines were only going to the richest countries, the companies exploited our desperation. But simply, pharmaceutical companies held us for ransom.
This is nothing new, and health activists in Africa even slammed Johnson & Johnson for exploiting vaccines that were produced in South Africa to countries in Europe, which have already immunized and large proportions of their population and had often a very big surplus of vaccines. At the time, activists called for a full disclosure of the South African government's contracts with Johnson & Johnson and these other big pharmaceutical companies, and there were threats, legal threats, that would have been taken to get the information.
We believe that the conduct of Johnson & Johnson has been scandalous, immoral, and unconstitutional.
Now, as things stand from this particular moment, from the 1st of October, in fact, in just a week's time, South Africa will be paying more than double the price of bedaquiline when compared with many other countries purchasing the same drug. And this agreement with Johnson & Johnson and South Africa has a clause which could allow for prices to be renegotiated, but that has not yet happened.
Middle East Institute Director Alex Vatanka believes that the prisoner swap between the U.S. and Iran is only a small step towards de-escalating tensions. The U.S.-Iran agreement includes the release of 5 Iranian prisoners and the unfreezing of $6 billion in Iranian funds blocked due to American sanctions. 5 American citizens detained by Iran and 2 more prevented from leaving the country have also been flown out as part of the deal. Vatanka explains that there are no signs of breakthrough in terms of diplomatic relations between the two countries, despite this recent agreement, calling it a simple transactional deal. In an explosive statement, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau told the Canadian Parliament that his country's security agencies had credible intelligence that the Indian government was behind the June 2023 murder of a pro-Khalistan leader in British Columbia, Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
Over the past number of weeks, Canadian security agencies have been actively pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
So far, the Canadian government has not made public any of the evidence it has for its claim of an Indian government hand in Nijjar's killing, but this statement has caused widespread conflict within British Columbia. India's Ministry of External Affairs, or MEA, had rejected the claims made by Canada's Prime Minister about an Indian link to Nijjar's killing, calling the allegations of the government of India's involvement in any act of violence in Canada absurd and motivated. The statement also confirmed Trudeau's claim that he had brought up his allegation with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, but was promptly denied by the Indian Premier. The MEA alleged that Canada had sympathized with Khalistani terrorists and was trying to deflect from the real issue with these allegations. Senior government sources said that Trudeau has briefed the leaders of some of Canada's closest allies about the case, including UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, French President Emmanuel Macron, and US President Joe Biden. Trudeau also urged the Indian government to participate in the ongoing investigation.
Any involvement of a foreign government in the killing of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil is an unacceptable violation of our sovereignty.
In related news, Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly has ordered the expulsion of a senior Indian diplomat over the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Joly's office said that the diplomat expelled was Pavan Kumar Rai, the head of the Research and Analysis Wing of RAW India's Foreign Intelligence Agency in Canada, has been asked to vacate Canada immediately.
We've been clear we will not tolerate any form of foreign interference. Since this was brought to our attention, we've been guided by 3 principles. The first one, we will seek the truth. The second one, we will protect Canadians at all times. And thirdly, we will protect Canada's sovereignty. I've conveyed these principles to my Indian counterpart, and I've also told him that we expect India's full collaboration to make sure that we get to the bottom of this. And as of today, and as a consequence, we've expelled a top Indian diplomat from Canada.
Jolie also stated that she will be raising the assassination issue with her G7 counterparts at the United Nations in New York. In a tit-for-tat move, hours later, India said it had expelled the Canadian diplomat with 5 days' notice to leave the country. In a statement, India's foreign ministry said the Canadian High Commissioner or ambassador in New Delhi had been summoned and told of the expulsion decision. The decision reflects the government of India's growing concern at the interference of Canadian diplomats in their internal matters and their involvement in anti-India activities. The Ministry of External Affairs issued a public statement saying that the Indian government had denied all responsibility for Nijjar's shooting and was insisting that pro-Khalistan activists in Canada had misled Canadian investigators. Relations between India and Canada have been tense over the activities of pro-Khalistan groups in Canada and Ottawa's perception that New Delhi was interfering in its internal affairs. This is the first time in recent memory that any foreign government except Pakistan has directly accused New Delhi of being involved in an act of violence on their territory.
A top United Nations official says quick fixes are not the answer to the world's refugee crisis. Filippo Grandi's comments come as the globe faces an unprecedented number of refugees and a growing backlash in Europe. Thomas Eyelikeness reports.
What you see here are some of the thousands of refugees who arrived last week on the Italian island of Lampedusa. It's becoming a more common sight. The island is the closest point of entry to Europe from Africa. The arrivals have overwhelmed Italy's ability to accommodate newcomers, and other European countries say they don't want to take any more refugees. UN Refugee Commissioner Filippo Grandi says instead of isolating migrants, countries should give them access to schools, healthcare and employment, and allow freedom of movement. He says that's the approach Europe took with refugees from the Ukraine war.
Many times we hear that all these things put a country at risk. On the contrary, that actually helped with social cohesion.
He goes on to say more money is needed for humanitarian aid. Grandi is critical of reduced aid budgets at a time when needs are growing.
The big humanitarian organizations, the Red Cross, the World Food Programme, UNHCR, are all undergoing some reductions at a time when we should be expanding because the crises are multiplying.
And to politicians who say the countries are being overrun by migrants, Grandi responds,
there is no invasion. There is no catastrophe.
Ultimately, Grandi says the root causes of migration have to be addressed. He notes a record 110 million people worldwide have been displaced. Grandi says they're fleeing not just to wealthy countries, often they end up in poorer nations. He says these people are seeking refuge from war, from violence, from repression, and from poverty. And they pin their hopes on their journeys, a belief that a geographic change will give them a better life. Thomas Eyelikeness from Atanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
World leaders are meeting at UN headquarters in New York City as the global organization's General Assembly gets underway, and the spotlight is on the UN's list of Sustainable Development Goals. EJ Gonzalez reports.
Developed nearly 10 years ago, the UN Sustainable Development Goals are an effort to deal with poverty, education, and socioeconomic issues. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says more action is needed on these goals.
They carry the hopes, dreams, rights, and expectations of people everywhere. And they provide the surest path to living up to our obligations and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, now in its 75th year.
Other issues high on the agenda are the number of displaced people globally and food insecurity. The theme of this year's General Assembly is rebuilding trust and reigniting global solidarity. The meeting comes at a time of a war in Europe, wars and political instability in both Africa and Latin America, worldwide economic instability, and a host of calamities including earthquakes, fires, and floods. Notably absent this year are the leaders of France, Britain, China, and Russia, all permanent members of the Security Council. EJ Gonzalez from Atanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Up next, El Chapo's son pleads not guilty. Balmain's collection robbed. And thousands take to the streets of New York to protest fossil fuels. Please don't go away. We've got more stories from around the globe when Matanang Agila International returns.
This portion is brought to you by Robic Builders.
Kailangan lang ay bilis ng kamay sa magpindot. May tsansa manalo ng hanggang 180,000 piso.
Please welcome ang Tara Gamers nating nakahera na breadwinners pa.
Perfect ka.
Agila po.
Saang bansa matatagpuan ang may pinakamaraming army ng BTS?
At Nicolin po.
Kumakaedad dyan. Hindi mo kaedad dyan, ano?
Kumaedad.
Ako, alam ko yan.
Easy ako eh.
And this is Tara Game! Agad! Level up!
Ayun na ka pa dyan sa bike eh. Bilis-bilisan mo naman. Ang bilis nga.
Bakit po parang di kayo mapakalid?
Yung anak ko dinala sa ospital.
Ako na lang magluto nung pinapaluto ni boss.
Bakit? Marunong ka ba?
Hindi ako marunong magluto, pero marunong naman ako magbasa.
Ito yung pinapaluto.
Buksan ang kala. Kunin ang mantika, maglagay ng isang kutsara.
Hey, 1, 2, 3!
At least 25 people have died after a bus careened off the edge of a mountain road in Peru on Monday. Another 34 people suffered injuries. David Oria reports.
The accident happened early Monday morning when the bus plunged 200 meters to the bottom of a ravine. The battered bus lay on its side with debris and personal items littering the accident site. Police and rescue workers combed the scene while onlookers watched from the narrow dirt road above. Crashes are common in this Southern American country, especially in mountainous regions. Speeding, poor road conditions, lack of signage, and poor enforcement of traffic rules are the main causes. An accident in the same region last month left 13 people dead and 5 seriously injured. David Oria from Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
In Australia, Queensland Emergency Services issued an evacuation order over the fast-spreading bushfire. Local officials said it will place 7 districts across Queensland under high fire danger by the end of the week. Meanwhile, authorities confirmed that the blaze was contained by the afternoon. Queensland Emergency Services warned that there was still a chance for the fire to burn for several more days.
Protests erupted Monday in the Libyan city of Derna, destroyed by a massive flash flood that left thousands of people dead. Hundreds of demonstrators chanted slogans against the government in East Libya and its leader. Ken Cruz reports.
The protesters in Derna call for a speedy investigation into the disaster and punishment for those responsible for the deadly flash flood. They also demand a United Nations office in Derna in compensation for their losses. Demonstrators rally against the backdrop of bulldozers clearing roads of mud and international rescue teams continuing their grim search for bodies. Crews are picking through the mud-caked wasteland of smashed buildings, crushed cars, and uprooted trees looking for victims. The smell of death permeates the air. UN health officials warn of disease outbreaks from contaminated water and a lack of sanitation that could cause a second devastating crisis. Libya has endured civil war for more than 10 years and has 2 rival governments. For now, they seem to have set aside their differences after calls to cooperate in the aid effort. Ken Cruz from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Italy is trying to deal with an influx of more than 6,000 migrants who have arrived on a tiny island off the country's south coast. More than 100 boats loaded with migrants began arriving on the shores of Lampedusa on Wednesday. JCU Mul reports.
Lampedusa Island is the southernmost port of call for people coming from North Africa. Italy's Coast Guard could not intercept the human smugglers after it found itself overwhelmed by the number of migrant boats. According to one media report, a child aboard one of the vessels drowned after it capsized near the shore. The island's one migrant shelter can accommodate just 450 people. Authorities are moving the overflow to elsewhere in the country by ferries, Coast Guard ships, and planes. So far this year, more than 155,000 migrants have sought refuge in Italy, double the number of last year. Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has vowed to crack down on illegal immigration, but the number continued to rise. Adding to the problem is the refusal by France and Germany to accept any more refugees. JCU Mul for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The U.S. military has finally found debris from the missing F-35 fighter jet, a day after asking the public to help locate the plane. On the 17th of September, the pilot ejected from the jet after a currently unexplained mishap. He was immediately taken to a local hospital, but reports say that he is in stable condition. The debris field is about 2 hours northeast of Joint Base Charleston, and the Marine Corps has said that they will begin investigating the area. Locals are cautioned to avoid the field while the recovery investigation is underway.
A police officer avoids jail sentence for placing a suspect in a patrol car parked on train tracks that was then run over by a freight train in Colorado, U.S. Fort Lupton police officer Jordan Steinck was indicted with attempted reckless manslaughter, reckless endangerment, and third-degree assault. The victim was left severely injured after the incident, but the presiding judge finds Steinck not guilty of the attempted reckless manslaughter, citing that the prosecutors did not sufficiently prove the charge. Despite the video evidence, Steinck is only sentenced to 100 hours of community service alongside a probationary sentence and dismissal from the police department. The other officer, Pablo Vasquez, still faces trial for his role in the crash as the one who parked the police vehicle on the tracks. He is facing 5 counts of reckless endangerment for putting the victim and other officers at risk, as well as for traffic-related violations.
The son of the Sinaloa cartel kingpin known as El Chapo pleads not guilty to U.S. drug charges on Monday. Rose Papaangelis has the details.
33-year-old Ovidio Guzman Lopez was extradited to the United States from Mexico on Friday. Guzman Lopez is the son of Joaquin Guzman, known as El Chapo, who is serving a life sentence in a U.S. prison. The Justice Department says Guzman Lopez say that several of El Chapo's sons, collectively known as the Chapitos or the Little Chapos, inherited control of the Sinaloa cartel. 3 of the 66-year-old
Over 50 items have been taken from the French luxury fashion brand Balmain's new collection just 10 days before its Paris Fashion Week show. This according to the company's creative director, Olivier Roustang's Instagram account. Rosal Feria has the details.
38-year-old designer Olivier Roustang says their driver has been attacked by a group of people and more than 50 items from their new collection have been stolen. The driver was transporting the merchandise in a truck headed from the airport to the Balmain headquarters when the theft occurred. The driver is safe. Roustang has been the creative director of Balmain since 2011. The show by Balmain is scheduled for the Women's Ready-to-Wear Fashion Week in the French capital on September 27. Rosel Feria for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
A Danish court ordered an artist to refund a museum which gave him an estimated 70,000 euros in cash to incorporate blank canvases entitled Take the Money and Run. Jens Hanning was commissioned by the Kunsten Museum to reproduce two works using the cash Danish kroner and euros to represent the annual salary in Denmark and Austria. A Copenhagen court ordered Hanning to refund the museum 492,549 kroner or $70,480, equivalent to the sum the museum had given him minus the artist's fee and the mounting cost. Museum director Lasse Andersson previously laughed when he first saw the two blank canvases in 2021 and decided to show the works anyway. But he said the museum would take Hanning to court if he did not pay back the money. Hanning, meanwhile, says that the money will not come back and rather called it a breach of contract, which is part of the work. Thousands of climate change protesters filled New York City streets, calling on world leaders to put an end to fossil fuels. The demonstration is part of a week of protests ahead of the United Nations General Assembly and Climate Week. Estela Dominique tells us more.
Marchers from some 700 organizations and activist groups wound their way through Manhattan, holding banners and chanting slogans. They want U.S. President Joe Biden and other world leaders to end fossil fuel use. They carried signs that read, "I didn't vote for fires and floods, and fossil fuels are killing us." Biden is among world leaders set to attend the UN General Assembly Monday. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has organized a Climate Ambition Summit for Wednesday. He hopes to accelerate the ongoing work to counter climate change by governments as well as the private sector. Activists plan other protests throughout the week. Estela Dominique from Matanang Agila International, Trusted Connected, on point.
Coming right up, Ohio is set to manufacture VTOL taxis. Esports makes its Asian Games debut. And comedian and online personality Russell Brand is accused of sexual assault. Catch the latest in business, sports, tech, and entertainment. Matanang Agila International will be back.
Kwentuhang makaka-relate kay you.
Menopause. Meron ka bang nararamdaman ng mga signs ng menopause?
Menopause really happens. In my case, I had a condition called endometriosis.
Miss Corina, ang ganda po ng hair nyo. Ano pong shampoo nyo?
Mapa-senior man kay you.
My apos are here. They're here with me and they give me such joy. And so, kung hindi ako magtatrabaho, how could I spoil them?
O Gen Z?
Nar is actually an accent from Australia. So like when you say no, you don't say no. They say nar.
Bida kayo dito.
Sumay! So,
Let's just always choose to be kind.
Kaya ugaliin ang tumutok kung saan masaya at maganda ang simula ng araw. 10 a.m. to 12, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, kada umaga.
TikTok has been fined 345 million euros or 296 million British pounds by Irish regulators for violating children's data privacy. The social media app has received complaints regarding the mishandling of children's data on age verification and privacy settings back in 2020. A spokesperson of TikTok disagreed with the decision as it focused more on features and settings from 3 years ago. They also emphasized the changes made for all underage accounts were set to private by default even before the investigation. Ireland's Data Protection Commissioner DPC has issued the fine for TikTok under the EU's General Data Protection Regulation or GDPR privacy law. Meanwhile, the DPC discovered that TikTok is not transparent with children's data privacy settings and asked questions on how they processed their data afterward. Data Protection Commission Helen Dixon stated they have found those accounts aged between 13 to 17 were made public by default after registration. GDPR gave TikTok 3 months to comply with its complete data processing evaluation. This month, all 17-year-olds and below will need to sign up to set their account to private by default. The state of Ohio and Joby Aviation Incorporated have announced their agreement to choose Ohio River Valley as the place to manufacture cutting-edge electric planes or flying taxis. Republican Lieutenant Governor John Husted stated Joby's decision to locate the first scaled manufacturing facility at a 140-acre or 57-hectare site. The site is at Dayton International, which is near Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and the headquarters of the U.S. Air Force Research Laboratories. Joby's production aircraft is designed to have 4 passengers and a pilot reaching speeds of up to 200 miles or 321.87 kilometers per hour and a maximum range of 100 miles or 160.93 kilometers. Joby is a 14-year-old company that became the first electric vertical takeoff and landing, also known as VTOL firm, to receive the U.S. Air Force Airworthiness certification. The company plans to build an Ohio facility capable of manufacturing and delivering 500 aircraft per year, effectively giving 2,000 jobs to $500 million projects, which is funded by up to $325 million from the state of Ohio. Meanwhile, Joby CEO Joe Ben Beavert said the company chose Ohio after an extensive search, as Ohio serves as the #1 state to supply parts for Boeing and Airbus. Ohio is also at #3 in the nation on manufacturing jobs. He also added that operations and hiring will start from the existing buildings near the development site when the legal and regulatory regulations have cleared. The development site is large enough to accommodate 2 million square feet or 18.58 hectares, and construction for the manufacturing facility is expected to begin in 2024, with production set to begin the following year in 2025.
Electronic sports or esports is set to debut as a medal event in the upcoming Asian Games this weekend. This marks the existence of esports to be acknowledged as an authentic sporting event. Experts say this will change the attitude in gaming as it paves a major step towards Olympic recognition. Players are set to battle in 7 games, including EA Sports FC, PUBG Mobile, Arena of Valor, Dota 2, League of Legends, Dream 3 Kingdom 2, and Street Fighter 5. The venue will be located in China's Hangzhou Esports Center. In the last 2018 Asian Games, gaming was only held as an exhibition sport.
To Dream realize, but Dream will eventually be realized once it gets included into Olympic as a full-fledged medal sport. But nonetheless, I think this is a Woodstock moment for not only the Asian esports community, but the worldwide community too, because this eventually will become the benchmark for a lot of other countries. The recognition of esports as a sport. So this will definitely become a benchmark.
Russia's fashion industry is rushing to fill the gap left by the departure of major Western labels. This despite staff shortages, a lack of equipment, and dwindling fabric supplies. Naya Dames tells us more.
Dozens of brands like Adidas, H&M, and Zara have closed shop in Russia since the conflict in Ukraine began last year, and Western sanctions have cut off access to foreign goods. Fashion Network says Moscow saw its European clothing imports drop by 37.2% last year. While the state pours subsidies into industries like clothing, Moscow faces an uphill battle to sell customers on the Made in Russia label. Russia stopped producing fabrics and lost the knowledge needed to train managers. Soviet-era schools that trained staff have closed down. One industry expert says factories are between 25% and 50% short of the specialists they need. Naya Dames for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
After sexual allegations against Russell Brand were published, the English comedian pointed out conspiracy theories that he claimed has ulterior motives against him. Stephanie Mayo has the scoop.
On September 16th, sexual allegations against actor Russell Brand were published from a joint investigation by The Times, The Sunday Times, and Channel 4's dispatches. The accusations were from 5 women, 4 anonymously, accusing Brand of rape, sexual assaults, and emotional abuse between 2006 and 2013. Brand posted his video response to multiple social media platforms denying the allegations and maintaining that all his sexual relations had been consensual. The actor's conservative fans supported him, including ex-owner Elon Musk, with Brand implying that the allegations are part of another agenda at play and hinted at conspiracy theories surrounding the accusations. Brand's stand-up show promoters have promptly pulled his appearances over the next 10 days, while his publisher Bluebird announced it was pausing all future book projects with him. Meanwhile, Brand's management agency Tavistock Wood Management severed ties with him soon after the investigations came to light. Apart from being a comedian, Brand is known as a conservative influencer who spread deep skepticism of the media. Stephanie Mayo for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Paraguayans set a world record by performing the bottle dance. The bottle dance is a traditional folk dance where performers balance glass bottles on their heads. This coincides with the first edition of the National Day of the Bottle Women. Official World Record Association records 580 Paraguayan dancers have balanced a total of 2,200 bottles on their heads at the same time at the Bicentennial Park in Asuncion.
That looks so cool.
I know. I want to do that one of these days. Let's
do it. Let's try it. Does it look easy though?
Yeah, like 10 bottles, 5 for each of us. And to send you off tonight, here's a quote from Australian actress and film producer of Barbie herself, Margot Robbie. Everything happens for a reason is something that we have to tell ourselves all the time, because it's good to have the idea that something good is around the corner.
I love Margot Robbie. She just always has this positive disposition. And I think it is a good thing to remind ourselves that, especially when we're going through something tough, we're waiting for that reason. Eventually, we will know why it happened.
And we're not even halfway through the week yet. So in case you have that negativity going about and inside of you, it's time to kick that off and turn positive.
It's only Tuesday. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Alagao-Flores. This is Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point. Thank you for watching Matanang Agila International. To receive more trusted, connected, and on-point news, follow, like, and subscribe to @Net25 TV.